This was 3 years ago, and I started college down the country. I was 18 and on Tinder and had never actually met anyone from it, but would just swipe through guys to be nosy and see who was on it. I was swiping right on some, and about a half hour after, got a message from this guy, who according to his account, was roughly 20 kilometers away. We made some small talk, and it was awkward, and I stopped replying. A day later, I received a friend request for him from Facebook. Mind you, I have a common enough name, so it would have taken ages for him to find me. We had no mutual friends, and my Tinder photos are not on my Facebook page. The only thing I had on it was the university I was attending, so maybe that's how he found me, but I don't know. I then quickly got a follow request on Instagram, and he somehow found my Snapchat username. I don't even have my social media, and it's a variation of my full name with extra added vowels and an underscore. I was freaking out at this point. I messaged him asking how he found my full name, and he just replied, "I think we have a connection. I really want to get to know you better." I unmatched him, deleted my Tinder, and blocked the accounts he tried to add me on all social media. After that, it was quiet for a few months. I was staying in digs and was knuckling down as I had a lot of assignments from the get-go. This was towards the end of November. I had no assignments due for 2 weeks, so I decided to go out with some friends. One of my friends stayed in student accommodation and the other was commuting, so she was staying with the other friend. I decided to walk back to my digs, as my landlady would probably freak out if I wasn't home that morning, and I really wish I got a taxi instead. I walked back and was about 15 minutes from the local nightclub we were at. It was at 3 a.m., and I was at the front door of the house opening up. The door was annoying, as it had 2 different locks, and I had to pull the handle towards myself to help open it up. It's also tough when you're tipsy, and trying not to wake up the family you're staying with. As I finally unlocked the door, a dark car pulls into the housing estate I'm staying in. It's quite big, and has a big green area in the middle for children, or people playing with their dogs. The car comes towards me, so I quickly get inside and lock the door. The car pulls into the driveway of the house I'm staying in, and just sits there with the full headlights on. I'm there shaking and too afraid to move from crouched below the door, as there's frosted glass about halfway up. As I get the courage to go upstairs and look out my bedroom window to see who it is, the car pulls out the driveway and speeds off. A few days later, I get a new friend request off the creepy Tinder guy on a new Facebook profile. Even though there were no pictures on the account, just the same name, I blocked it. It was enough. It even caused me to transfer universities the next year. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if it was just bad timing, or if it was that creep on Tinder that sat in the driveway, but it was petrifying. If you take anything from this, be careful who you let on social media or dating apps, and what information you have up.
A few months back, I decided I was pretty much over the breakup I'd had during the summer with my long-term girlfriend. It took me months to be able to get over it, as I was really heartbroken, but at some point you just sort of have to get back on the horse, don't you? So I downloaded that dating app Hinge and started swiping through profiles. It's definitely the best dating app I've come across, as it lets you actually message girls directly instead of just sort of hoping that they're going to see you and match with you. So it definitely gave me a better chance at getting to talk to the kind of girls I'm into, and one of these was a Persian girl named Sarushe. Sarushe was honestly one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever laid eyes on. She had this big mess of wild dark hair that was dip-dyed blonde towards the ends, really high cheekbones, perfectly sculptured eyebrows, and some of the deepest, darkest, most alluring brown eyes I'd ever seen. She was simply stunning, and because she'd grown up in Tehran, the capital of Iran, I had something of an edge. You see, I speak a little bit of Farsi, the language they speak there, and I figured that might impress her if I told her as much, which it did, and boom. Only an hour or so later, I sent her my opener and we were chatting. She was an extremely busy person, and I was flattered when she said that she would make time to see me, so we arranged to meet for coffee over the weekend. She showed up to our date in her gym gear and apologized for being so underdressed, but could only make it after a scheduled workout with a personal trainer. But I didn't care at all. She looked absolutely smoking hot in her yoga pants, and we were having coffee, just kind of chatting about our lives, our interests, all that first date kind of stuff, when I look out of the big glass windows to see this dude leaning up against his car. I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me at first, but after a minute or two I realized that he was just straight up staring at us. At one point, Sarushe noticed me looking over her shoulder and asked what I'm looking at, and I make a comment about the bloke outside who seemed to be proper eyeballing us. She then turns around, looking over her shoulder, then spins back with this terrified look on her face before saying something like, we have to leave, now. I'm all like, why? Do you know that fella? And she denies knowing him, but I'm not a dope. I knew what the score was, like straight away. Either it was a controlling family member or something, or it was a psycho ex-boyfriend. I figured all he'd do was follow us to try and be intimidating or something, but I never imagined he'd actually lay hands on me, and the way that he did it absolutely scared the soil out of me. You see, where I live is built up along this big mile-wide river, and the coffee shop me and Sarushe had chosen to meet at was right on the docks. So we're walking along the city's promenade when the guy cornered me, grabbed me by the throat, and started pushing me backwards so my back was leaning over the rails. I tried to get him off, but this bloke was an absolute unit, and as much as I tried, there was no getting him off of me. And the thing about the river where I live is that it's got a really, really strong current. Like if you fall off of a boat or over the side of the prom, you can be in serious trouble as the current will suck you under the water, drown you, and then just drag you out into the Irish Sea. So the whole time he's threatening me, telling me to leave Sarushe alone, all this big macho masculine stuff. Sarushe is smacking him around the head, telling him to get off me, and all the while I'm thinking, if I go over the edge here, I'm a dead man. And I don't think he had any idea of it either. Like it didn't sound like he was from our city, as we have a very particular accent, which he just didn't have. So he was probably thinking he could lash me in the water and embarrass me a wee bit, and I'd just be fine, but I'm telling you now, I wouldn't have been, and he'd have been done for manslaughter. But thank God, he didn't throw me over the railings, he just sort of backed off and headed back the way that he'd come after he'd blown off a little bit of steam. I mean, the girl was gorgeous. I don't blame him for being a bit sore after a breakup or jealous of another lad, but Jesus Christ, if he'd been angrier, if he'd have lost his cool, really lost control, I legit wouldn't be here typing this. I'd be floating in the Irish Sea somewhere, maybe washing up as a rotten corpse on the beach in County Cork, all because of some idiot getting a bit jealous. In June of 2020, a TikTok user with the username UgHenry decided that he and a few friends would use TikTok to record themselves going on an adventure. It was an adventure that was based around the popular adventure app Randonautica. Upon opening the app, Randonautica asks you to share your location. Then it will ask you to choose which type of point you would like to generate, be it a void or an anomaly, before fetching coordinates using a random number generator. The user can then open that location in Google Maps to begin their journey. Randonautica adventures were something of a meme at the time, and many other TikTok users were uploading videos of themselves using the app. Given that some journeys had ended with some rather creepy occurrences, UgHenry decided to give Randonautica a try himself. And so Henry and his two friends spent their afternoon following a series of apparently randomly generated coordinates around their hometown of Seattle. The keyword they entered into Randonautica app was travel, so when the app pointed them in the direction of Alley Avenue Southwest, a street right next to the shoreline of Elliott Bay, they figured the ocean was their final clue. But when they arrived at their destination, they found something disturbingly relevant lying on the rocks near the water. It was a suitcase, and in particular, a travel case. Like many people at the time, Henry and his friends were almost convinced that there was a kind of magic at work with Randonautica. Scores of other randonauts found the endings to their journey to be far too fitting or poetic to be purely random or coincidental, and now Henry was one of them, and he had a potential viral video to go with it. But Henry's video is about to go viral for considerably more sinister reasons, because as they approached the travel case, they began to smell something rotten in the air, and the situation was about to take a decidedly dark turn. At first, Henry and his friends simply laughed off the smell, thinking it either came from one of them or from something washed up further down the beach. They continued to film the bag, with one of them prodding it a little before telling the others how heavy it seemed. One of the people in the video jokes about the contents being rotten groceries, hence the smell. But after another makes a quip about the contents being cash, it's only a matter of time before one of the friends decides to open the case. But as soon as they do, the god-awful stench in the air becomes even more intense, so much so that the friends begin retching and gagging off camera. It was only when they saw the stuffed trash bags inside the case that they began to fear the worst. And after calling 911 and having some cops check out the travel case, the worst fears were confirmed. Inside the travel case were 2 dead bodies, one male, one female. Ugg Henry wrote that he broke down the moment he got home after finding the suitcase. He added that his laughter in the video was his way of trying to get through the situation, and said he has since then been unable to sleep. The TikTok video of Henry's morbid discovery earned him more than 15 million views, and fueled the speculation that the Randonautica app was somehow cursed. But outside of the paranormal speculation, a very real investigation was launched into how these 2 dead bodies came to end stuffed inside of a travel case. According to a post-mortem examination performed by the King County Medical Office, based on the state of decomposition, 35-year-old Jessica Lewis and her 27-year-old boyfriend Austin Wenner were shot and killed on or around June 9th, just days before they were found. Police then set about questioning those closest to the couple, one of which was their landlord, 62-year-old Michael Dudley, who rented the top floor of his large home to them. On the night of their killing, neighbors reportedly heard a man yelling, "Please don't do this, just let me leave," before gunshots were fired. During his questioning, many of Michael's answers seemed inconsistent or cagey, and was overly nervous during the conversation when he apparently had no reason to be so. It was just enough for the police to focus their suspicions on him, and they quickly obtained a search warrant for the house that both Michael and the murdered couple called home. During their search, law enforcement discovered bullet holes in one of the walls, blood in the couple's bedroom, and a fresh coat of paint on a random part of a banister. When the police confronted him regarding their findings, Michael claimed that he'd heard Jessica had somehow managed to cut herself and denied the bullet holes even being there. He was promptly arrested, then taken to a holding cell to await further questioning. There has been plenty of media speculation as to why exactly Michael Dudley would shoot the young couple, but one source has suggested that the straw that broke the camel's back was their inability to make rent payments. Outside of that, there are plenty of skeletons in Michael's closet that suggest deep-rooted violent proclivities. One media outlet discovered a history of interfamilial relations and carnal abuse when they came across an assault restraining order filed against Michael by his own daughter in June of 2018. Some court documents are said to have read, "My father indecently assaulted me for 9 years, from age 10 until age 18, forcing me to share a bed with him from age 10 while he'd play adult movies on the TV. I don't feel safe in my home or leaving my home to work." His daughter also added that Michael had a very disturbing habit, a ritual in which he would take out his pistol and threaten to use it on her. Gina Yeshka, Jessica's aunt, said she was close with her niece before she died. Gina told the media that her knowledge of Michael Dudley more or less lines up with the allegations made by his daughter. Sometimes he would break their car so they couldn't leave, she said. He put trackers on people's cars. Anytime he ever got in a dispute with anybody, he would tell them to leave but try to lock them in the house. But most horrifying of all, according to Gina, Michael had another disturbing tendency: cruelty towards animals that couldn't protect themselves. He killed the dog in front of them and left the carcass outside for 3 days to scare them, Gina continued. They had nowhere to go. That's why they stayed there. He beat this dog to death with a hammer because it got one of his chickens. He just left it out there for the other dogs to look at and sniff. He's a freaking psycho. She also said the loss of her niece, a mother of 4, and her niece's longtime boyfriend has all but destroyed their families. I don't want them to be remembered in any violent way. I want them to be remembered for their humanity and their kindness. I want to believe they didn't suffer. Michael himself has been taken into custody, but evidence suggests that someone might well go unpunished for their involvement in Jess and Austin's murders. During the post-mortem of their dismembered bodies, the coroner observed that the slices and hacks around their joints were disorganized and appeared to be done in different manners with various devices. The police spokesperson also mentioned that after dismembering his victims, Michael had apparently set about dispersing their bodies in multiple bags throughout various bodies of water, and given the time frame and placement of the bags, it is unlikely that Michael did this alone. This means that there could well be someone just walking around Seattle, a free individual, who helped cut up and dispose of 2 innocent young people, a loving couple who could possibly have been executed over nothing more than a late rent payment. After his arrest, Michael's bail was set to $3 million, with the judge citing his willingness to commit horrific acts of violence. The process of dismemberment would have taken a lot of time and effort, and his willingness to take these extreme steps demonstrates the threat he poses to the community, charging documents read. It appears that Michael is indeed guilty of Jess and Austin's murder, and it's more than likely that he'll go to prison for a very long time. But it was TikTok that made them famous. Millions of people all over the world learned of such barbaric acts because of a simple video messaging app. Big tech companies like Facebook or Twitter might like to think that every so often social media brings a little light into our lives, yet it seems that every so often apps like TikTok can bring a little darkness into our lives too. Zachary Latham and his neighbors, the Durham family, did not get along. They lived opposite each other on the Thornhill Road in Vineland, New Jersey, a town of about 60,000 located 40 miles south of Philadelphia. After being forced to live with his grandparents at the age of 16, the Durhams initially found Zach to be a boisterous but polite young man. But as the years went by, neither he nor the Durhams had a good word to say about one another, and ultimately, the mutual animosity came to a head because of Zach's erratic style of driving. William Durham, along with his wife Catherine, had accused their 18-year-old neighbor of reckless driving on more than one occasion, and what was intended to be a friendly word with the young man quickly soured into a confrontation. When first approached by Mr. and Mrs. Durham, instead of responding amicably to their concerns, Zach responded by pulling out his cell phone. He then spitefully accused Mrs. Durham of being a Karen and swore at an enraged Mr. Durham when he objected to his behavior. Any chance of a peaceful coexistence went straight out of the window when Zach told the couple he'd be posting the video online. And post it he did, with the video going on to be viewed more than 3 million times by TikTok users around the world. What followed was an escalating feud that was later described as a powder keg. The confrontations between Zach and the Durham family were bad enough beforehand, but the publicity Zach had garnered meant that complete strangers were pouring gasoline on an already blazing fire. Hundreds of comments on the TikTok video of the argument between Zach and the Durhams urged him to cut her tires, egg her house, or the ominously vague, go after her.